Trump has vowed, I mean, one of the things that he said when he took office was he was going to go after his enemies and people that he thought did him wrong. And as we know, like many of those people who are on that enemies list are media companies. Businesses may or may not come out of this.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Make That Make Sense, the game show that breaks down the weekly stories shaping the business of media. We've got another great guest this week, so let's get to it. This week, I have the pleasure to welcome Liz Kelly Nelson. Liz is the founder at Project C, a weekly newsletter and consulting service that helps independent journalists build sustainable business models and navigate the ever-changing media landscape. In previous roles, Liz was a vice president at Vox.com, helping the company build out sustainable revenue strategies. Before that, she was a vice president at Gannett, better known as USA Today. And in her earlier life, she was a columnist at the Washington Post. All right, let's get to it. Hey, Liz, thanks for coming on Make That Make Sense.
Thank you so much for having me, Eric. Really excited to be here.
Super excited to have you and excited to break down the week in media news with you. Should we get to the rules really quickly and then get into the show?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
All right, so a quick background for our audience. On Make That Make Sense, we go through one headline, one tweet, and one deal in 15 minutes. Each section, meaning the headline, deal, and tweet, will last 3.5 minutes. You'll only have 1 minute to answer each trivia question, and all topics are from the last couple of days. Okay. All right, let's get to our headline.
Let's do it.
So, to say the Washington Post is going through some turmoil as of late would probably be a drastic understatement. But they announced just in the last couple of days major changes to their overall strategy, including organizing their newsrooms differently and engaging more in their digital strategy. So, from your perspective, how do you think these new moves could help in trying to retain some of the subscribers that they've obviously lost in the last couple of months, given a couple of the moves they've made?
Well, that's the big question. I mean, this is obviously a big pivot for the Washington Post. But the question is, are these the right moves? And what is the end goal, right? Like, what are they trying to get to? Is it to retain subscribers and grow that subscriber base? Is it to remain the institution where democracy dies in darkness? Or is it to curry favor with the Trump administration, which is, I think, a question that a lot of the people who are leaving and dropping their subscriptions are really questioning that. They have announced this third newsroom, which is something they've been talking about for quite a while, Washington Post Ventures, and so they're finally getting into that. And they also announced back in January something called the Star Talent Program, where they're actually going to be elevating their journalists to have more of a creator style presence and really capitalize on what, we're seeing in audience trends. That's something they did really early on and really successfully with Dave Jorgensen, who's known as the Washington Post TikTok guy. He launched during COVID and has a huge following, and I think really is a model for how legacy media organizations can engage with new audiences and younger audiences in a great way. So if it means more of that, I think it's a good thing. I think, though, what we need to watch out for are a lot of the things that are happening with management, right? And when I say management, I mainly mean Jeff Bezos, because a lot of the moves that he's making are resulting in a lot of that star talent leaving, right? So the most recent person who just left was Ruth Marcus, and there are several people that left before her. Ann Telney is an editorial cartoonist. Cameron Barr just left and announced his exit a few weeks ago. There are reporters who are leaving for The Atlantic and other places. So it makes you wonder, what talent will they have left to attract their audiences with?
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. And I think it reflects a bigger trend across many newsrooms of going from a writer-centric newsroom to a reader-centric newsroom. For somebody that's not deeply ingrained in the media industry, what does that transition mean? How do you go from a newsroom that's writer-centric to reader-centric, and how does that affect the overall product?
Right. And actually that's when Matt Murray made his announcement on Monday. That's one thing that actually stood out to me as a positive, is him saying they must be obsessed with engagement
Yeah.
right? Rather than being a writer's paper. And that's something that we in the journalism industry are always very aware of, that we can tend to be very navel gazy and often write for each other, right? Both within our organizations, but also for other reporters at other organizations to say, we've got a scoop or we've got a definitive take on something. And usually that coverage we see very clearly in our metrics is not what drives subscribership, is not what drives engagement. So I think that Matt Murray is absolutely right in saying they need to pay more attention to that. And so that what that looks like at organizations who have done that well is really centering your audience team, right? And making that team very visible, but also have some real power in decision making. But then it needs to extend to editors and how stories are assigned, how they are written, and really understanding what resonates with your audience. It's not impossible.
Well, it will be super interesting to see the Washington Post. We can only hope that editorial independence will hopefully continue, but we will have to see.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, we just saw Jeff Bezos buy the Melania documentary, and now they're running The Apprentice. So, I mean, he's not just got the Post on the line; he's got Blue Origin contracts and Amazon Web Services. So, a
Yeah,
lot of conflicting businesses there.
for sure. All right, should we get on to our tweet?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, this is a space you're deeply familiar with and a space that you
Yeah.
talk a lot about, that being independent journalism. And one of the
Mhm.
trends we've seen, even post pandemic, that has been so stark is major traditional media stars going and doing their own independent thing. And one of the reasons for that is that the traditional media business model has kind of broken down a lot.
Mhm.
For a lot of these people that are going the independent journalism track, what are sustainable business models for making it as an independent journalist, and what should journalists be looking out for in that realm?
Yeah, well, so this is actually a really great story and a really great tweet from Chris Saliza, who is a good and longtime friend of mine, who is, I think, a very great case study in making this work. Chris left CNN a couple of years ago and launched his Substack. He has about 30,000 subscribers now, and the rule of thumb for that larger number of subscribers is that you usually have between 7 and 10% that are actually paying subscribers, which he does. So he's pulling in around 260K a year, right, from that subscriber base that he has. And that is a story that is repeating itself over and over again with newsletter writers, like reporters who have gone and launched their own. We just saw Paul Krugman make that choice from the New York Times. Tara Palmieri just made that choice this week. And there are a ton of them. Taylor Lorenz is somebody who left the Washington Post, talking about star talent leaving, and are finding real success, not just on Substack, but on Beehive and Ghost and in other places. So that's a really great model and one that is working for them. There's also a lot of opportunity in video.
Mm.
Especially I would say on YouTube. Like we're seeing a lot of video forward talent. We had a lot of folks from Vox Media who left the Vox video channel and launched their own channels on YouTube. Folks like Johnny Harris, Cleo Abram, Joss Fong, who are making a great living now building their businesses on YouTube and are able to go out and land brand deals, but are also taking advantage of programs that YouTube has, like AdSense, which is more like programmatic advertising.
Yeah.
Um, you're right. I mean, this is something that's near and dear to my heart. This is what I do with Project C. And what I like about this is it is the bright spot that we're seeing for the growth of journalism, and it being a sustainable economic business. The difference is that it's not supporting, in most cases, large companies. It's actually journalists who are building the sustainability for themselves. And when I talk to them, the reason that many of them are making this choice is because they don't feel like they have any job security in traditional journalism institutions anymore, so they're building their own. And so with Project C, I work with 5 other instructors, and we launched a program called Going Solo. It's a 6-week virtual workshop where we are teaching journalists how to leave traditional journalism and launch their own ventures. We're actually in the middle of a cohort right now. We just actually have our 4th class out of 6 tomorrow. We are launching another cohort in April, and we have 40 plus more people on the wait list. And they are all people who are coming out of newsrooms who are looking to choose this path.
Well, it's definitely an important venture you're embarking on because there are so many talented journalists that are looking to build their own brand in this kind of new era of journalism. So I'm think you'll keep being very busy in this space.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so because it's very exciting to see. And there's a lot of great reporting coming out of this space too.
For sure. All right,
Yeah.
should we get on to our deal?
Let's do it.
So, no matter what side of the political aisle you're on, the first 7 weeks of the Trump administration has seemed like a lot longer than 7 weeks, to say the least. And
Yeah.
one of the themes after Trump got elected back in November in the media space is that big media mergers were expected to heat up, right? You had the Paramount deal that was expected to go through easily, the Comcast deal. And those have
Yeah.
really slowed down a lot as Trump has been suing people in those organizations.
Right.
How do you think the media M&A space will play out for the rest of 2025? Obviously, Trump is looking to have a significant footprint on the media industry at large. Do you think media
Yeah.
industry deal making will continue to be at a standstill? How do you kind of see this happening?
Yeah, I think we're seeing, the hesitancy right now, the standstill, because the media industry is trying to figure out where they can move forward, right?
Yeah.
Where the deals can be made. You pointed out the Paramount deal, you pointed out Comcast. Both of those are at a standstill because Trump and his administration and his supporters are targeting them, right? So there are very specific reasons. With Paramount, there's the lawsuit against 60 Minutes. And with Comcast, they're investigating the company's DE&I practices, right? So I think what we are going to see is more and more companies, kind of like the Washington Post and Jeff Bezos, making different decisions about their corporate policies overall and the choices they make, not only in their journalism, right? So Paramount might not give 60 Minutes as free of a rein in the future to go after the administration. And we are already seeing many companies pull back from their DE&I stances. And Trump has vowed, I mean, one of the things that he said when he took office was he was going to go after his enemies and people that he thought did him wrong. And as we know, like many of those people who are on that enemies list are media companies and journalism outlets, and most large media companies have some tie to journalism. So I think we're going to see a lot of reshuffling as we figure out what that looks like. I think it could be a great time for right-leaning media companies and institutions, for Fox and Newsmax and people who have always kind of been on the right side of the Trump administration, or more on the right side than on the wrong side. We may see some extended deal making going on that end of the spectrum.
As somebody who would be running a newsroom or a big media corporation, is there a line you can play between, let's say, appeasing the Trump administration in the near term while also not sacrificing all editorial kind of independence? You're seeing a bunch of newsrooms trying to play almost an impossible line, right, between limiting some corporate policies but standing firm on some things. Is this an impossible battle, or is there really a strategy to it?
I honestly would say it's too soon to tell, Eric. I mean, this is when values are tested, when ethics are tested, and when businesses may or may not come out of this on the other side. And so we're going to see different companies making different choices about how they approach this. I would say one great counterexample of a company that is thriving, but has not like really buckled to any of these regulatory threats that the Trump administration is posing is the New York Times Company.
Hmm.
Again, it's still a private company owned by the Sulzberger family, but they figured out bundling, 10 years ago and have built an incredibly strong business. And so, they are going to probably come through this pretty well, right?
Yeah.
And have been able to do that while maintaining what they, clearly have as their company values. We are seeing the Washington Post go in a different direction. We're seeing the LA Times go in a different direction. We're seeing Comcast and others choose a different direction. And that may actually buy them some grace in the short term, but what will it mean in the long term with consumers? If the drop off in subscribers to the Washington Post company is any indication, it's not a good story.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get past the serious part and let's go do some trivia quickly to wrap up the
Oh,
show.
got it. Okay.
First one, a true or false? The first in-color TV broadcast happened in 1959.
I'm going to go with true and maybe guess that it was a presidential debate.
So the answer is actually false here. I only learned this answer last night, but the first in-color TV broadcast actually happened in 1954. So still in the 50s, just a couple of years off.
Okay, okay.
All right, guess that person. This person covered the JFK assassination, is the host of the CBS Evening News, and was rewarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
I am going to guess Dan Rather.
Close. It's Walter Cronkite.
Yeah, well, I thought maybe Dan might have been like a young reporter out there covering, but
It was possible. All
yeah.
right, Liz, really appreciate you taking the time and love to talk about these media topics with you and would love to keep in touch.
All right. Thanks, Eric.
All right, thanks, Liz.